Good evening and welcome to the briefing room. I'm Madhav G. Now, ladies and gentlemen, since March, multiple attacks on commercial vessels have claimed the lives of Indian crew members. 2 Indians were killed aboard the Skylight tanker on March 2nd. One Indian national, in fact, losing his life to the Safesa Vishnu oil tanker on March 10th, and 3 on Setebello on June 10th. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is really, of course, what's happening on ground as far as the war is concerned. Repeated strikes, retaliations that are taking place. And this seems to be the new template as far as the US-Iran war is concerned. There are tit-for-tat strikes that are intensifying, plunging the Gulf into a dangerous new escalation. While it all began in the recent past on the 6th of July with Iran targeting 3 commercial vessels on the Strait of Hormuz, the US responded with airstrikes on southern Iran. Tehran then closed the strait and launched missile attacks on Gulf nations. Now, the fallout has reached India. The missiles may have fallen far from our borders, but they have brought grief to an Indian family with an Indian life lost in the escalating conflict. For the 3rd straight night, American forces have pounded Iranian targets, while Tehran has retaliated by hitting US-linked sites in Kuwait and attacking 2 UAE tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The conflict has now claimed an Indian life, and 1 Indian crew member who's been killed and others who've been injured. As tensions explode across the Gulf, India has condemned these attacks and called for an immediate return to diplomacy. The fallout is already rattling global markets, with crude oil surging to $86 a barrel, a 4-week high. Let's also tell you more about the Iranian strike that claimed the life of an Indian crew member after Iranian missiles struck 2 UAE oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The attack took place in the southern shipping lane within Omani territorial waters, where the tankers Mombasa and Al Bahia caught fire and suffered extensive damage. 8 crew members were injured, 4 of them critically. The tragedy highlights the growing human cost of the Gulf conflict, with Indian nationals now bearing the brunt of a war unfolding far from home. Now, India has condemned the attack on 2 UAE vessels that claimed the life of an Indian crew member, urging all sides involved to return to diplomacy. But let's also tell you about the impact of what really all of this is going to have. Let's listen to the response first coming in from the Ministry of External Affairs.
We had issued a statement post summoning of the Deputy Chief of Mission of Iran. We conveyed to them our deepest concerns and that we strongly condemned what has happened. We lost a precious Indian life, and there are several Indian nationals who have been injured, and a couple of them are also seriously injured. So we conveyed our strongest protest with the Iranian side on this particular matter, that these attacks, which we condemn, must stop at the earliest.
Let's also tell you about the impact of war on Indian seafarers in the last 7 to 10 days. The first incident that we saw was 1 person killed as well as 6 wounded on the attack on UAE tankers Mombasa and Al Bahia. There was a second incident where an Indian crew member unaccounted for or missing following the maritime attack on GFS Galaxy. We've also seen, of course, the total impact on Indian seafarers: 1 confirmed dead, 1 missing, 6 injured just within the past 1 week. However, since March, there have been multiple attacks on commercial vessels, and these have claimed the lives of Indian crew members as well. 2 Indians were killed aboard the Skylight tanker on March 2nd. 1 Indian national lost his life at the Safe Sea Vishnu oil tanker as well. We've also seen how there were 3 on the Setebello on June 10th. There was another Indian who remains missing from the GFS Galaxy that we just told you, and now 1 more has been killed aboard the Mombasa. The sea lanes have become battlefields, and Indian sailors are now caught in the crossfire. As the US-Iran conflict escalates, the war of missiles is now being matched by a war of words. Donald Trump has unveiled a sweeping new Strait of Hormuz doctrine, declaring that America is crippling Iran's offensive capability, taking over as the guardian of the strategic waterway, and imposing a 20% toll on cargo passing through it. Tehran has fired right back with an outright rejection, asserting that Hormuz remains Iranian territory, not America's to control. Iranian officials insist that they are fully prepared to counter any US move, reaffirming that Iran alone is the guardian of the strait, while signaling that the proposed 20% levy could be replaced with what they call a fairer mechanism. All right, there's breaking news coming in. US President Donald Trump has unveiled a dramatic shift in his Strait of Hormuz strategy. The proposed 20% reimbursement fee on cargo transit is now set to be replaced with trade and investment deals. While declaring the strait open to all nations except Iran, Trump has also said a blockade applies to vessels coming from or going to Iranian ports. And the plan includes deeper trade partnerships with Gulf nations, with the US president claiming that investments will boost American jobs and strengthen Washington's economic footprint. Let's quickly take this across to Mayank, who's joining us. Mayank, what is the meaning of this shift? Because we know that Trump is somebody who says something one day, does something another day. But even by his standards, this is a totally new shift. When he realized that the toll is not going to work and that Iran is going to intervene, now he says this will be factored into the trade deals.
In fact, it was sort of a realization that toll regime is legitimate. And that is what the point, this is the same exactly the point which Iran used to, in a way, to come across and to come out with its own point. And because Iran has always been talking that they'll be charging, toll from this side. So it is exactly that realization that he had to retract and change the same point in a different manner, saying that the people or the countries from within the Gulf, they are going to invest billions and billions of dollars to his country, which he would like. So it was that same realization that toll regime would be legitimate, and that is going to create a long-term effect for all the nations which are around that region, which is Strait of Hormuz.
Thanks so much for joining us. Very, very significant, even as the fighting has begun in a big way. What really is the option, really? Because the impact of this can't be missed, whichever part of the globe you're in, because the global crude prices are being sent into a complete tizzy with every missile fired in the Gulf. Brent crude has now climbed above $86 a barrel. That's where it's at the moment. And look at the price just on the 6th of July. We're just talking 8 days ago. It was at $72.36 a barrel. Now at $86.35. Therefore, climbing a whopping $14 a barrel in the span of just 8 days. Now, this has triggered fresh concerns for the global economy as well, because we've read out, of course, what the price was on the 6th and how it has slowly climbed right until the 8th. And this has raised some serious questions about what really we're looking at, because if on the 14th of July it's at 86, if this fighting continues another few weeks, where could the prices finally land up, and how that could really impact on many global economies, including that of India's. And joining us for the very latest and what we can expect in coming days and weeks is Professor Robert Pape, who's, of course, a former advisor to the White House and, of course, a foremost analyst when it comes to military and defense affairs and strategic affairs of the United States and, of course, globally speaking. Thank you so much for speaking to me, Professor Pape. Now, weeks into the West Asia...
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me begin by asking you, weeks into the West Asia conflict, you had warned of an escalation trap. What made you so sure, and were you expecting an escalation, especially after the declaration of a ceasefire?
Yes. So what made me so sure is I've been modeling the bombing of Iran for 20 years. I have taught conventional targeting strategy for the U.S. Air Force. I have advised every White House from 2001 to 24 on various escalation issues. And so this is something that I'm not just commenting on as a hobby after the fact. This is something that I have worked on for over 30 years. So this is quite a bit of experience and expertise coming to bear. And the model, the escalation trap model, has been predictive month after month after month. It said regime change bombing would fail. It said the 6-week bombing campaign would fail. It said the blockade would fail. It said this would all make Iran stronger. Then I explained the MOU was going to fail. And now I've explained why Trump is not tacoing out, as all the markets and others have, who really haven't studied these problems, have been saying. So people are coming at this from their basic knowledge, not from the deep. It's like going to the doctor and saying you have a heart problem and not talking to the heart surgeon, talking to the nurse assistant.
Right. Now, you've highlighted that analysts have missed something, that this escalation has happened, despite there are many who have estimated that Trump couldn't afford one with midterms around the corner. And you've hinted that the answer to the speculation is not military but political. So what is your estimation about what is truly behind this escalation? Will it in fact benefit him politically? And are there actually any political pressures that are driving this?
Yes, there are two big political pressures driving this, and I lay them out on my Escalation Trap Weekly here that your listeners can go to, and they can read the full 1,800-word analysis of this. But bottom line here is that, number one, President Trump went into this MOU saying he's doing it to avoid a world economic crisis and becoming Herbert Hoover. The MOU did not stop the oil inventories from being drawn down. We are still on the Titanic heading to the iceberg, hitting that iceberg in just a few weeks. The world may not know it. The markets are finally catching up this morning. But President Trump, he's know it. So this MOU, this has been a total failure from President Trump's perspective. It's not stopping him from being blamed for the world economic crisis that's coming soon. The second big reason is his MAGA base, not the American base, not American voters in general, but the opinion surveys of MAGA are strongly in favor of escalating this war. And that means if he doesn't escalate and gets into the midterms, they're not going to show up. So if he's got any hope, it's not that he's doing this, sir, to gain support. He's trying to minimize his losses. And the problem he faces is not acting is worse than acting for him politically. And this is just the bottom line. He's not doing this to lose power. Trump is holding on by his fingernails to power, and he's desperate. And this is a desperate measure, very risky, absolutely. Everybody, I would not advise him to do this, but this is the logic that I believe is driving it, and it's the logic of the escalation trap framework. This is what is driving the escalation. My work is not just I know how to put a bomb on a target. That's not what this is. This is like going to the heart surgeon. I am looking at how military action impacts politics, and I've studied that intersection for decades.
Very interesting to see how you explained all of that with that analogy of the heart. But you also asked that is there a larger war that is now inevitable, and there's a full-scale war coming?
Inevitable.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. The word inevitable is a little too strong, and I realize our listeners want to know, like, what's happening, yes, no, like a light switch. But very strongly here, we're heading to a worse war than in March and April. People are saying, are we going back to war? No, that's not where we're going. If this goes further, this will be much worse. And it will be worse because the real problems here of ground operations are we're heading in that direction fast with the repositioning of our forces, not just with Trump's words. This is literally putting our forces in harm's way in order to prepare for the ground operations.
So there will be a ground invasion. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying a ground invasion, the word invasion, sir, means like we have 100 or 50,000 troops. No, we're talking about 5,000 or 10,000 troops taking islands or beachheads on the coast of Iran. That's what we're talking about with the ground. But this is only the beginning, sir. This would not be the end of the matter by any stretch, because, of course, Iran would fight back. Now, this will go on for weeks and weeks, not just simply a few days, and we try it, get our toehold, and then we leave. No, sir. If we move forward here, we're in for a dime, in for a dollar. So this is much, much more serious. And, of course, that means escalation likelihood with destroying oil infrastructure, all that stuff we thought would never happen is now in front of us. Now, it hasn't happened yet. I'm not telling you it is inevitable. What I'm telling you is that people have been missing the risks. And my job is to keep people ahead of the actual risks, not just simply blow with the wind.
Right. And in your estimation, do you see more countries getting involved in the current conflict? Do you see otherwise neutral countries, for instance, taking a categorical stand on this?
No, no categorical stands are coming here by anybody. Everybody will hedge. Everybody will talk out of both sides of their mouths. Nobody is right now. Except for the followers on my Substack, which is really quite large. I mean, it's become one of the most popular Substacks. Those folks have been right on it. They've been following this, going what's going. But except for those followers, very few people. Most people right now are shocked. They can't believe what's happening because they all thought Trump would taco out, or the supreme leader. They really want to kill Trump. I mean, come on. No, this is coming because Iran is moving from survival to ambition to revenge. The supreme leader just called for the death of Americans anywhere in the world. And that includes, sir, in India. Okay, so this is not, you got President Trump now not tacoing out, moving and repositioning his carriers off the coast within missile range of the IRGC. Think about this. So this is what has been building for weeks. I've been explaining this for weeks. Now the world is catching up. But no, sir, the countries here, they're kind of in a shock because they really wanted this war to be over. They didn't want a long war. Well, sir, people don't go into long wars wanting a long war. They get in an escalation trap. That's how the long war happens, not because somebody says, oh, yeah, great, let's have World War I or World War II or the Russia-Ukraine war that goes on for 4.5 years. No, sir, these are escalation traps, and that's been my focus for many decades to explain, well, how does this even happen?
Absolutely, and that's perhaps why you were one of the first to predict all of this in your Substack, as you rightly mentioned, as far as the escalation trap is concerned. But you also have mentioned that Iran's new campaign of revenge is changing the strategic logic of the conflict. Can you explain this, please, for our viewers?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So up until now, everybody has thought that President Trump, because he started it, if President Trump would just end it, the conflict would be over. It's all just about President Trump. What they're discovering is when President Trump fought the war, he has so injured Iran, traumatized. Think about the number. It's not just the supreme leader we killed, which is like our president, but it's his wife, the first lady. It's members of the first family. It's the cabinet we killed. It's like a third of the Congress we killed in this leadership decapitation. The heads of the Pentagon and the CIA. And on top of that, we killed about 4,000 Iranians overall, which is like a 9/11, except Iran is 3 times smaller. So that's like inflicting a 9/11 every week for a month on Iran. That's why you're seeing the outpouring of tens of millions of Iranians. This isn't just manufactured anger by the regime. The regime is catching up to the anger, not the other way around. So what you're seeing, sir, is, if Americans are killed, sir, Americans won't pull back. What you're going to get is doubling down by Americans, at least for a long time. And so what you're getting is a true spiral of escalation now. And that is the real danger point. This is not just about, oh, let's just give Trump a few presents and try to, satisfy his ego. The problem you have here is we never should have done this war. And Iranian people aren't just going to say, oh, sure, you killed all our leaders and you killed all our people, but we're just okay with that. And you did the blockade and you threatened to nuke all 92 million of us. No, we're okay with you. No, this, sir, is too much. This is why this war should never have started, sir.
Right. We've heard so much in the last few days about Iran's supposed nuclear capabilities, about its nuclear dust, so on and so forth. So are we now to assume that it's not about that anymore for the United States, because it had also hit nuclear facilities, killing the Ayatollah, of course, and now it's about ground control of Hormuz, it appears?
That means, sir, these are layered, okay? So the public wants everything to be about one thing. So we have 6 words, clickbait, okay? This is more, wars are often about several things in stages. So it is not that the nuclear issue is off the table at all. In fact, what you're seeing is that there is now satellite evidence from June. I don't mean from a year ago, that Iran may be restarting its program at Pickaxe Mountain. President Trump said he may be going in, and that means the 82nd Airborne, and that would be a very, very deadly fight. So you have a situation, sir, where there are multiple issues. The Red Sea, the Houthis and the Saudis are now fighting here and bombing each other. Well, the Houthis could shut down the oil coming out of the Red Sea. They've done it before. So you have a situation, sir, where even though there's a lot of pressure in the media to fit everything into 6-second sound bites, we've got a core issue right now, which is the center of gravity is in Hormuz, but there are rings around the center of gravity, like an archery target. And those rings are, oh my goodness, they're not trivial. And notice, I didn't even mention the ring of Lebanon. So think about, sir, all of the instabilities here that are all starting to come together just as the world's oil inventories are running to zero. Right. This is we're heading to some of the most dangerous weeks in the war, not just, oh, more tit for tat and so forth. And even if Trump pulls back, how are we going to get Iran to pull back from its revenge campaign? Somebody's got to start talking about that. Where are the negotiators in Qatar and Pakistan talking about Iran's revenge campaign? I don't see any hint from those very important leaders about calling for Iran to pull back from its revenge campaign. Right. Where is that, sir?
Right. You mentioned the most important thing on everyone's minds, the kind of oil shock, the oil supply chains, and the potential economic impact of that. Because the question that many are asking is that if US is effectively trying to secure Hormuz, what does it mean for the global oil markets? In India particularly, our energy security is very, very closely linked with what happens in the Middle East and West Asia. So is this war now as much about oil and about security? And also adding to that, if the kind of havoc that we saw in the fighting of about 50 days approximately is concerned, and you're saying it's going to be much worse, where do you see oil and oil prices heading towards in coming months?
Well, let me just talk about what's going to happen physically in the Strait of Hormuz, which is it's going to be virtually shut down to zero. And that is likely to last for some time, not just a day or two. And notice, if you look at the curves of the shipping, you would see that we had about 140 ships a day coming through Hormuz until February 28, when it went down to about 5 to 10 a day for months and months. And when we got briefly for a week or two up to about 30 or 40 a day, never getting anywhere close to 140. And so what you see, sir, is it's now back down to just 3 or 4 ships a day. And that is likely to continue. In fact, just last night, the UAE had a tanker go through, and it was attacked by Iran, and people killed on the tanker. I mean, killed on the tanker. So you're going to have to, so a lot of those tankers want to get out because they've been there in solitary confinement for almost 5 months. Now they have to take the risk of a jailbreak at the risk of death by the prison guards. Then how many are actually going to want to go back into prison? How many are going to want to go back into this prison? I think this is, sir, what the real problem is. Think about the Strait of Hormuz as a prison. Think about Iran as the prison guards with all the guns. They're shooting the prisoners as they get out. Exactly how many are going to want to keep going back in here? And this is what people are just not taking seriously. Why the markets don't take this seriously in the price, sir, that's not my job. Everybody's speculating on why the markets are unrealistic. But you know what? Markets have been unrealistic before. I mean, this is not the first time markets have blown it, okay? And I think the problem here is they don't know how to assess the geopolitical risk. They really don't. They don't. They know how to push buttons and buy and sell commodities, but that's not about geopolitical risk. And they can try to hire firms, but those firms are not experts in escalation dynamics. They're usually security firms that provide bodyguard protection for the executives, and bodyguard protection is like hiring the police and the police really don't know that much about geopolitics. They can go and pretend they do, but this is a different story, sir. Anyway, I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but it's very important to know that we're heading to some pretty serious times. And by the way, this is what it looks like behind closed doors with those senior elites you mentioned. There's no pulling back here and being nice. And it's not that people are rude, it's that they're pretty direct, because we're on the cusp. And if we're going to pull back, we got to understand how we need to pull back. This isn't just pulling back Trump. This isn't just waiting for Trump to taco out and change his mind. We've got a problem now that the Supreme Leader has called for, as a call to action, the death of Americans anywhere in the world, and people trying to sweep that under the rug. This is not a good way to settle this conflict.
All right. Professor Pape, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us very candidly your expectations. We certainly hope they don't come true, that peace prevails at the earliest. But unfortunately, this is the kind of crisis and these are the times that we are living in. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me, sir.